Hello, and welcome to a Cannaconvo episode of Cannabis Last Week, brought to you by Global Cannabis Times. I'm your host, John Puro, trying out my new backlight there, really intimate setting, but hopefully setting up for a nice, good chat. Now, before we get down to an awesome interview, I need to note that any opinions I express are my own and not those of my law firm, Zuber Lawler. And as always, before we start, Scott, before we introduce you, we got to do a quick prayer to the video chat gods. May our Wi-Fi connections be sturdy. Any children and dogs remain quiet. And may Amazon Prime another time. Amen. Now, with that being said, I have the pleasure of introducing Scott Jennings, CEO and founder of Pantry and owner of Flower Market Delivery. Scott, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join me for this Cannaconvo.
Thanks, John. Great to be here.
All right. So, Scott, please just start off by giving us a little bit of a background on, your companies before we get into some really, really interesting stuff in terms of, what's going on in the market, how your company's suited, and what we have to look forward to in the future.
Sure. Pantry Food Co. is a healthier alternative edible brand with better for you ingredients, leveraging cannabis and adaptogens to provide functional benefits for consumers around major ailments like sleep, pain, relaxation, PMS and period relief, and really anything a consumer is dealing with. We're trying to solve problems. And so that's our North Star. We want to make the world a better place and we want to help consumers. And then Flower Market Delivery is an online marketplace in California, really to promote the health and wellness around cannabis and around edibles and other products, right? We think that there's a deep conversation that needs to be had. There's a lot of education that needs to be had. And a lot of consumers are looking to have that education in the convenience of their home and get products discreetly delivered to their home. So that's what Flower Market Delivery is.
Got it. And so just to be clear, right? So both businesses are California only right now, correct?
Yes, we, as we'll get into, a big fan of going where others don't go, because as an investor, you don't want to invest in a crowded trade. So I actually really like that everybody's leaving California right now. It's creating better value, and I'm doubling and tripling down on the market.
Got it. I'm obsessed with California on the podcast, maybe just as, out of jealousy being out here on the least coast, I feel, as you guys refer to it, here in New York, New Jersey. So, but, California, I think ultimately is one of the most important stories in the overall national market because, struggles in California, one, a lot of experience and talent, as you said, leaves California, looks for opportunities in other places. And California has an incredibly strong, right, multiple decades old, illicit market where it's used to supplying the rest of the country. And, California in certain senses, the industry struggling right now as it is in a lot of what we call mature markets. But Aaron Miles of Verano very astutely pointed out, what's mature about this really? It's just mature by comparison to the states coming online right now. So, California had their, cultivation tax and everything. So you smell opportunity there. Right. And obviously, you guys do something very, very specific in terms of it. So as you said, you believe opportunity lies in California right now because people are hopping out?
Well, there's multiple levels, right? So I always go high level and I drill down, right? I think what got everybody excited about California is it's the fifth largest economy in the world. You can't ignore that. The TAM is massive, right? The complexities has always given everybody a bit of concern. Well, more recently, the earlier years, nobody was concerned. It was like everybody was charging at the mountain and wanting to win the game, right?
Yep.
But I've always thought that it looked like we cannibalized each other, to be honest, John. It was like you and I, we both love cannabis. We both want to sell cannabis, but we have to go through limited dispensaries. So that means I need to beat you for me to win. And when the industry is cannibalizing each other like that versus educating the 40 million consumers why they should maybe pay a little bit more tax to get clean product and safe product, I find that's led to a graveyard of operators and brands. And first off, for years, I never agreed into growth at all costs. When I saw that firsthand, I was taking a step back. And it was almost like I was crazy, because when everybody's doing something and you're doing something different, you can really scratch your head and say, well, should I be doing that? but it just didn't make sense, right? Like you're just spending too much money. And eventually, as we're seeing today, investors are going to say, whoa, like we're not going to give you more money to go at that. There's not enough revenue being generated, nor is there enough durability, right? Because a lot of people acquired consumers that were non-core consumers, and they're with you while the staff or bud tenders are with you. But then the second that staff moves on to promote something else, you don't get that LTV, that stickiness that really makes all the economics worthwhile. And so I've always been a fan of California. And now with a lot of people moving out of California, I think the value is just getting better for us here. Yeah.
Got it. A ton that I want to touch on upon that. So for one thing, right, you're talking about, chasing revenue at all costs, building up big numbers, seeking investment versus a little bit, it's funny how you said, like, am I doing something wrong when everyone else is, going there? Or maybe they're lemmings, right? It's kind of like taking a different approach can be a little bit, concerning, right? But as it sounds like you went with a disciplined approach. And to a certain extent, do you feel like that's got a little bit by how specific what you focus on is? And here's something I find interesting about what you said in terms of your business, right? That you were referring to, core consumers and everything. With what you do, well, I guess theoretically, everyone could be your consumer if you're tailoring to people. Who do you consider your core demographic? A lot of the industry, we talk about the connoisseurs, who are the hardcore, typically flower heads, and the kind of the canna curious people who, approach it in different manners of consumption. Who is your core, demographic now and in the future? And how's that informed your approach in terms of chasing revenue versus chasing value?
Yeah, well, I'll start with who's maybe not our core consumer. And I would say that's the value shopper, right?
Yeah.
And I think they're chasing a high, as we all have, right? Like you and I were talking about our dealers, like they're coming, hey, I got White Widow this time. I got something else this time. Oh, well, let me try that. Oh, let me try this. There is an interest amongst consumers, especially the connoisseurs, to try the best thing. And I don't know if that's really breeding loyalty to brands versus breeding loyalty to the plant and wanting to try different things. That consumer is not for us. I kind of learned that first and foremost, when somebody started talking to me about in your 20s, your invincible 20s, you'll do anything, You'll try anything, you'll put anything in your body. And so when you talk to these consumers and you're talking about healthy edibles or healthy products and better for you, shit in, shit out, they're like, what do you mean? This tastes better. And I'm like, yeah, it's got 10 times more sugar in it. Like that's not good for you, But in your 20s, when I would go back to my 20s, I didn't care either, right? Yep. So there's a trend out there called the know better, do better trend. And it's well established, which is, as you experience health problems, whether around your family and friends or personally, you start thinking a little bit more consciously about your health. Right? You realize that your body is a bit fragile. And there's a great quote I like: everything matters until you have a health risk. And then the only thing that matters is health. Right? So we shouldn't defer our health until we have a problem. We should proactively take care of it for preventive medicine. Right? So when we look at who is our consumer, I think one of the ways that we've drilled in is we've looked at the psycho of a consumer, right? Which is the disciplinarian. That means they're not just going through their week and doing whatever they want. They're not just grabbing McDonald's on the way home. They're not haphazardly waking up. A disciplinarian is somebody that plans out their week and they're trying to maximize their week. I could think you and I are in that bucket, right? I don't know you overly well, but I know that you do a lot, right? Podcast, legal, very busy individual. And you can't just say, well, I'm going to go out and get wrecked on a Monday and then, be able to handle my week. You have to be pretty dialed in. It doesn't mean you don't want to go out and have fun or have a cheeseburger or something like that. But a disciplinarian is somebody that's planning out their week, planning out what they're eating, when they're going to the gym. And we know that if you look at a disciplinarian, they're going to say, well, we've all had our fair share of alcohol and we've had our fair share of maybe over, taking too much melatonin or drinking a whole bottle of wine at night. And we're saying we're looking for ways to extract more value out of our week. And everybody that has gone to edibles and tried them, they're like, wow, I'm sleeping better. I feel better. Like I just talked to an ex-Wall Street guy that I've known for a long time. He goes, I gave up drinking and picked up edibles. I'm in the best shape of my life because it's helping me sleep better. It's helping me manage my pain. So that's a core consumer demographic for us. But to your point, when you look at the bell curve of who we can help and how it expands, 50% of the population, actually probably more, is having sleep disorders. PMS and period relief is 50% of consumers out there. Anxiety is on the rise. Obesity is over 50%. These are all things that we can help consumers. But there's also a great Buddhist line, the teacher will appear when the student's ready. So if you're in your 20s or you're not ready to improve your life, which you may not be a disciplinarian and you may be happy with corn syrup and unhealthy ingredients, then it's probably too high of a CAC for me to try to pull you over. You're probably good with your 7 bourbons at night and using that to fall asleep and hurt your quality of sleep and your ability to recover versus moving over here. And so that all ties back down to our CAC, right? We don't want to acquire somebody who doesn't want to be acquired. And there's a lot of stubborn consumers out there that just love what they're doing, right, wrong, or indifferent. And they want to keep doing it.
Got it. Yes, I'd like to think of myself as a disciplinarian. Thank you very much, Scott, for assuming I'd be in that demographic. I think it's very, very interesting, right? In terms of, and a lot of the stuff that you told me before, we started, in terms of, that this is about customization, right? I think that one of the first focuses on this industry, which, I try to encourage people, don't think of cannabis as one drug. It is many drugs, right? The different manners in which you consume it lead to different effects, whether you're ingesting it or smoking it, then different terpene profiles, everything, very different effects. And we all have our own little personal endocannabinoid profile. So now you were talking to me about, so I think that the first goal of the industry has been for consistency of product, right? That, knowing what you're getting when you can't, directly see something you're putting in your lungs. Now, I think that the next step is this customization level. So I'm very curious to learn, your folks' approach to customization now and where you think it's going to evolve, right? Because one thing that always pops up in my head is, the shorthand that's needed. Sativa versus indica, bullshit. Didn't realize it was historically bullshit. One rogue botanist somehow got, this concept latched onto, and then it's really just irrelevant. So talk to me about, where you see the value is in customization, how you folks approach it, how you think it's going to develop in the marketplace as we get to know our bodies and our endocannabinoid profiles better.
I'll start at the high level. Again, I think it starts with customizing how you're talking to your consumer demographic, right? Because a lot of people are trying to talk to everybody. And if you're trying to serve everybody and you're a generalist, you're probably not very specialized in certain ways, right? So we have first, again, we thought the conversation in a dispensary has been tough because we call it a very big mix. You've got a 7-Eleven, you got a vape shop, and then you got a GNC or Whole Foods. And that is confusing to a consumer. That's a generalist store, right?
Yep.
And so we want to start to have a very specific conversation. We are not here to tell you what to do, but we're here to help. And we're also here to have a conversation. We want to know what you're using, how it's working for you. Is it working? Is it not working? We want you to be part of the process of making a customized product for you, because we all know the marketing out there. Best ingredients, number 1, customized for you. And it's like the same crap, So it's like, we want to bring those consumers in. And then not only we want to bring those consumers in and have a high touch, but I'm like a super, super big data nerd. And I really believe that, like, I'm wearing the Whoop, which I love. Wearable data is fantastic. The health community is doing more and more blood panels outside of their traditional doctor. They're just saying, hey, look, you're doing a basic blood panel. I want to do a very extensive one. And so for me, where customization is going is learning from the consumer, right? Your blood panel, your wearable, your big ailments or your needs, right? Collecting as much data as possible, while also letting the data around specific cannabinoids catch up, which is, I think, and you may know this better than I, but it's like absent, like where is the the fundamental research around CBN, it's like maybe not there yet, right? And so you have to rely on the consumer to give you this feedback. And you also have to be aware of what you said, indica sativa, like these marketing traps, right? Like, was CBN real, right? So we want to learn on the cannabinoid side and on the nutrition side. We want to learn on the consumer side. And then everybody's favorite word these days, we want to layer on AI and ML to analyze consumers, blood and wearable data, analyze cannabinoid data, and customize personalized products for the consumer that we're really excited about. I think we're a little bit of ways away from getting there. But I think when you talk about the complexity of cannabinoids and the human body and nutrition, if you're not leveraging big data, AI, ML, it's impossible to do as just an individual or a marketing team trying to, say they're doing it, but not doing it.
So agree wholeheartedly on the focus on data. Love it. Love geeking out about it. Is there, touching back on an earlier point when you're talking about who the core consumers, some of these people are very focused on, the product, like flower or whatever. It was Chris Beals when he was CEO at Weedmaps who came on and said, I'm going to say something blasphemous in this industry. Brand for, the hardcore connoisseurs is not one of their top 5 determinative factors when buying product. They're looking at potency, right? Specific strain, things like that. And I was just like, whoa. That was an interesting thing. So I agree with that. So how right now are you guys collecting from your current customers the data, right? Is their blood profile, what are you guys doing now? And what do you see yourselves doing in a couple of years from now in terms of getting more specific data?
I'm going to answer that. But going back to that last point, I would say, what's interesting about the health community, and I don't know if the data has really said this, are they brand specific or are they ingredient specific?
Yeah.
I'm looking for a certain type of protein that doesn't have certain allergies. Oh, that brand fits what I'm looking for my diet, right? Mm-hmm. So I think there's some similarities there. And that's where we want to meet this conscious consumer, this disciplinarian, and have a low sugar SKU, have a whole food SKU, right? We want to start to match what they're looking for on the underneath the brand, which may then give them the confidence to say that brand is for me.
Yeah, they're looking at the bullet points, right, to see that there's overlap with, say, the 3 or 4 requirements that they want. Like you said, it could be gluten-free, it could be low sugar, it could be, a certain amount of protein or whatever, right? So that's where you hit. That's interesting because that's not necessarily, that's when you're entering the nutritional realm, right? I feel like there's a more focus on some of those
CPG.
specifics. People know what they want, these disciplinarians, because they know themselves. And everything you said about that, I completely relate, right? In terms of, you're invincible in the 20s and your 40s. I like to remind myself and people that we are ultimately just highly evolved monkeys. And the way that we think at different points in our life is guided by how far we are away from the inevitability of the next, the beyond, right? And so I agree with that, right? I'm 40 now. A lot of us with the pandemic had health stuff, older generations, everything. So I think that it's such a, kind of a key time for that. So in terms of, so as I was saying,
let me answer that. So, a lot of people separate all these things, but to me, it all rolls up to CPG, right? So I'm looking at a cannabis brand to see that it has the right terpene profiles and the right cannabinoids in it, right? I'm looking at a food product to see that it's got the right ingredients in it that suit me. I don't think this is all that different, right? Whether you're looking for nutrition or you're looking for a certain plant profile, it does seem like the ingredients are giving the brands power, right? And this is where, somebody even told me how brands are leading with ingredients, right? It's smart water, but listed whole on it is ashwagandha smart water, right? So it's got ashwagandha. So now I love smart water, but I bought it because ashwagandha is sticking out in something I want in my diet.
Got it.
But progressing on to the question you asked, the first thing that drove me nuts was as a brand selling to third parties, I wasn't having the direct conversation. That drove me nuts. Why did you buy? Did you like it? Did it work? All these simple questions that I want to have that conversation with the consumer. flower market was my move to engage directly with the consumer, see
Hmm.
what they're buying, be able to have the conversation with them, call them up and say, hey, I saw that you purchased this. Tell me about your experience. Like there's just so much you can learn from that. So the futuristic view I gave you were pretty far off, but the
Yeah.
piece that we just enabled, which again is data, but it's ultimately going to help us reduce our CAC, is to understand the consumer better. Not every consumer just wants a Monday through Friday text of 20% off. They want you to care and ask, hey, did that work? Is there a family member we can send them something that would help for them? Having a more in-depth and intentional conversation with the consumer is incredibly informative to a brand like us as we formulate better products, but also as we make marketing to help focus and raise awareness to those segments, including the question, how did you hear about us?
Hmm.
That question will help you understand, well, how did that consumer hear? And then how did another consumer hear? And by letting this data feed in and you collect more and more of it, and then I have two or three advisors that are data scientists, which I'm learning a whole host of information from them. How do you take the data and make it more and more valuable to a company to ultimately make the economics of the company better?
Got it. So right now, as you said, it's getting the data directly from the consumer, getting information, asking the right questions, right? A lot of times, right? In terms of determining what are the factors that make them buy certain products, versus other. By the way, on my podcast, I'm obsessed with puns, alliteration, and also acronyms. I love leaning into acronyms that just shouldn't be acronyms, but I also want to make sure that everyone knows CAC, customer acquisition costs. Just want to put that out there. Great one though. You sounded ridiculous when you said it, so I appreciated that. No, I'm kidding. So I just wanted to I always like to clarify that just in case,
Yeah.
someone has to go and try and look it up. And the other thing I thought was interesting you were talking about is, the different cannabinoids and where we are. Unfortunately, a politically based war on drugs cost us decades of research. So it is going to take time to catch up, right? We are scratching the surface of research into really just 7 or 8 cannabinoids right now. And it's funny you said CBN because I've been very curious about it. I've had, sleep issues and everything. I realized, cannabis has really been the best sleep aid I've ever found. And I finally tried some CBN edibles. Excellent. Mwah, right? Really just, lulled me in, slowed the brain down just perfectly. So I'm excited about the possibilities. I'm obsessed really about these different minor cannabinoids. It's unfortunate the way that some of these things are being exposed to the marketplace through, hemp-derived cannabinoids with zero regulation. This interview is happening at an interesting time, right when the DEA put his foot down and said, THCO is not a natural, part of the plant. It is synthetically derived. It is therefore a violation of the Federal Analog Act. And that was itself only a couple of weeks after I did a Golden Nugget story on the podcast about how THCO, some scientists found, creates ketene when smoked, which is what caused the vaping crisis of 2018. So it's good to see that they stepped in when there was actually a really legitimate, scary potential health risk of people burning holes in their lungs
And what
in
is
something
that?
that appears regulated but really isn't. Yeah,
And
sorry.
what does that all translate to? Like, there's a word I'm infatuated with these days. It's trust.
Yeah.
How much trust have we destroyed 70 years of propaganda? How much trust do we continue to destroy by, allowing, these products on the market that aren't regulated? There's a trust issue out there. And I think that's part of the reason why in California, you have great brands, you have a huge market, but yet the market has struggled to grow. And people say black market, traditional market, taxes. I'm not saying those don't have a role,
Mhm.
right? But not one person has said it is trust as well. We are having a trust issue to get consumers to trust that this is not a drug anymore. This is a regulated, clean product that can help your quality of life improve across many different facets.
You're hitting the nail on the head. It's such an important thing. You're fighting a stigma, right? There are people who are not been exposed to this drug, for decades, who think it's anathema, who've been, taught in various ways that, oh, it's a gateway to awfulness and more serious drugs, right? And then slowly, gradually, right, it's kind of attrition there in terms of, propaganda, seeing friends using it, and we have legalization. And it's just so, I mean, I always find it very interesting how the industry reacts to things that I think could be setbacks, right? 2018 vaping crisis, what happened? The industry said, oh, lo and behold, all of this happened in the illicit market. Something like this could not happen in the legal regulated market because of all the testing that we're required to do to ensure the safety of the products that we're giving you, right? And then it's very, very frustrating, I think, for those in the state license business who have to deal with things like 280E and all the regulatory hurdles to see this, kind of, we always talk about as lawyers, right? There's always unintended consequences to every law. Did Mitch McConnell, when he was trying to give a leg up to his Kentucky hemp farmers, think that he was legalizing, psychoactive cannabinoids with basically no regulation when they passed the Farm Bill? No. But enterprising individuals, when the CBD market crashed, pivoted, and Delta 8 was born, and it is not regulated. You hear all sorts of crazy anecdotal stories. The FDA has limited, capacity to enforce, and it's just that it could, lead back to like a rehardening of the stigma or fears, because there's just, someone who walk in, buy a Delta 8 gummy, like someone I know in my family who I'd tried to get high for years and, buys a gummy with 50 milligram Delta 8 and, zonked out of their mind. And we're the ones here trying to say, come to the legitimate side, right? We have to jump through more hurdles. It creates, additional costs, but you can trust the product, right? And you exist in, a segment that requires even more trust because people are relying on you for nutrition and health, right? This is, what people, as you said, once they hit whatever point it is, this is going to be and will be, as they get older, an increasing focus of their life on health. So they need to also trust you and everything that you're saying in terms of the nutritional stuff on top of all the considerations of the cannabinoids and how it's going to specifically help them in facets of their life, right? I mean, that's your goal.
Yeah, and I would say, nutrition is a big focus of ours, but what you learn is food is just a high trust thing. Like, I don't know what you're going to have for lunch or dinner, but if I told you to not have what you like to have and to have something else, you better come correct with your recommendation because, you only get a couple meals a day or a couple snacks a day. And, it's a very personal thing, food, when you put in your body. Nutrition's a very personal thing too. So what I've learned from the CPG category that I continue to study outside of cannabis is that food is highly personalized and you need a lot of trust to move somebody over. Now you add on the distrust with cannabis and you're like, oh my goodness, we need trust that's like off the scales. And this is why I go back to, the psychedelic movement with the shamans, the guide. It's a very personalized touch to a consumer journey that we're trying to, do with programmatic ads or billboards. And it's just like, I don't know, like that's not the trust channel, it's you talking to your mom and pulling her down the space and being like her kind of shaman. And back to your point about the unregulated products, my mom in New York sent me a picture. Look at this, I'm going to try this, 50 milligrams.
Seriously.
She's not young. And all you need is another bad experience to radiate that story that I had the blah, blah, blah edible and I was off the keister. And then they tell everybody, oh, I'm never going back. And it's like, we don't need more of that, but it's here, it's today, and it's hurting trust even further.
So, all right. So a couple more points I want to focus on, I find interesting. Let's talk about your products, right? And your focus on your products. And, you have all these nutritional goals, right? And yet I think there actually has to, be a focus on them being delicious, right? So like what guides, product development, product consistency from your perspective? I find it very interesting when we're getting into not just, an edible that the intention is to get you high. It is food that is intended to also give you nutrition. And as you said, might be to address, PMS symptoms, kind of talk me through your thinking there and products that, hit the bar for you, maybe products that even didn't, anything like that. I'm curious to hear about.
Before Pantry, we almost really started a sleep product because cannabis and sleep has been personal to my life for over 2 decades.
Preaching to the choir. Yep.
Right. Like a little toke before bed went a long way for me in my life. So, I wanted to come after the sleep market. And, when I kept looking at the sleep market and looking at traditional CPG, you saw it was just gummies with sugar and some artificial stuff, right? Our chief medical officer, Dr. Deb Kimless, and my, amazing wife, who's a health coach, like you're just learning more and more that you need whole foods, right? So we started with raw cacao, which is rich in antioxidants, right?
Hmm.
But then we didn't go and add a bunch of processed or refined sugar. We
Hmm.
used a very small bit of unprocessed, unrefined coconut sugar, right? Which
Hmm.
helps keep your blood sugar low. It's low glycemic. And to me, that's imperative. Like you're trying to help somebody sleep, but then you're giving them all this sugar, and that may be spiking their blood sugar a little bit right before sleep. So we went after the ingredients, right? We looked at adaptogens too, and we started to pull those in. We said, okay, there's rich history with adaptogens. Cannabinoids are new, CBN's new, but certain adaptogens have been around for thousands of years, and there's a lot of research and documentation that we can leverage and pull that forward. Where we didn't really focus as much, John, is flavor. And I've learned that flavor is a massive, massive impact for consumers. Now,
Yeah.
you'll always, with raw cacao, you'll have some people that say, I love it. And you have some people that say, I don't love it. But
Yep.
more than loving, yeah. And
Sucks.
another thing is, I think you train your taste buds, to be honest. Like when I had fast food more often younger, yes, that tasted better. Now I'm eating salads and healthier food. I think it tastes delicious, but if you have them next to each other, obviously processed food can taste, it's chemically made to make your taste buds jump out of your mouth, right? So that was the Night Bite. And the Night Bite's been a top seller of ours. It's really fantastic. It mixes, a lot of people will use too much melatonin. We use just 1 gram of melatonin. We worked with a sleep doctor. We didn't want to put too much melatonin in there to mess up the natural production of it. And I was ready for feedback. I was ready for people to tell me, hey, you got to change this. And the feedback's been phenomenal. So
Great.
we're not changing a thing. We're leading forward with that, signed, sealed, and delivered. But we moved into other categories. One is anxiety and relaxation. So we
Okay.
use the same raw cacao base, but it's only 3 ingredients, right? Again, with the no refined, no processed sugar in it. And so you're getting the CBD, the THC with raw cacao. And a lot of people don't even talk about this point. When you have something, Bulletproof Coffee kind of, talks about this a lot out here, your body is either absorbing more of it or less of it. Well, when you give your body chemicals, your body's like, ooh, we don't want to absorb that. If you give it raw cacao, your receptors may be opening up and you may be absorbing not only more of the antioxidants in the cacao, but more of the cannabinoids in the product. So that's another one. And then we've got our Good Day Bite, which mixes immune boosting ingredients with functional mushrooms. And then you've got the THC and CBD, right? So there's the value we're providing to consumers across nutrition, functional ingredients, cannabinoids. We're really over committing and not over promising, but trying to over deliver to our consumers a plethora of value so that they can feel good having this in their pantry and taking it day by day. And then on the other side, we've got our real fruit jellies. Nothing really fantastic about those, except they're made with real fruit. It's real fruit. The other guys using juice concentrate and sugar and artificial flavors. No artificial flavors, no artificial ingredients, made with real fruit. And again, we talked about trends. I think it was Mars that just bought a brand called True Fruit for, I think, $200 million. What is it? It's a whole food snack brand. Why? Because consumers are waking up more and more and saying, I don't want unprocessed 20 ingredient, things in my pantry. I want a whole food with a clean label. And if it's got some functional benefits or nutrition benefits in it, I'm in, sign me up. I'll pay a premium. Hopefully it will keep me away from the doctor.
Got it. I think we have time to discuss one other topic. So let's talk about California, right? We talked about it a bit. And it is such an interesting market, an important one. People don't realize, sometimes when I am talking to people and I drop stats from the podcast, one that shocks people is the percentage of jurisdictions in California that opted out of retail. Now it's also interesting in terms of, you have a focus, you have this business that's focused on delivery. I'm curious to know your thoughts Sometimes I like to say that I want my, interviewees to put on their, tokerdamus. It's a wizard hat predicting the future, but it's in the shape of a joint, is the way that I really envision it. Maybe if I could edit in on Zoom or something. But I'm curious to know your thoughts, right? I mean, a little bit in terms of how California ended up here in ways that people didn't anticipate. But as you said, people are exiting, how you see the California market developing a couple of years down the road in terms of delivery, retail, just, your overall thoughts. I'd be very curious about being on the ground there.
Yeah, I always have to analyze the current CPG market, which will give us insights to the cannabis market, right? So
Hmm.
in the traditional CPG market, everybody got squeezed downstream. The blueberry farmer, the farmers at the bottom, they're getting squeezed, right? Who do
Hmm.
they get squeezed by? The people that own the consumer up top, right?
Hmm.
Amazon ended up buying Whole Foods, and Amazon now and Whole Foods put pressure on distro and put pressure on brands and put pressure on farmers. And on Wall Street, you used to say, shit rolls downstream, right?
Hmm.
We can see that happening in cannabis, but it's exacerbated. Why is it exacerbated? Because when you legalize on a state level, but you localize the rollout, you've had supply way outpace the rollout of retail or the access points for that product to move forward. So what is
Hmm.
everybody doing at the top of the funnel? They're squeezing downstream. And
Yep.
it's a crazy squeeze. And you hear it. The farmers who work harder than maybe anybody, they're getting squeezed. Brands are
Yep.
getting squeezed. Everybody's getting squeezed, right? So how do you alleviate this squeeze? You need to pull more people into the top of the funnel, right? Now, when you look at government, you say, well, we got to try to do something without government because you never know when they're going to actually do what they, make
Yep.
some progress here. And so
Hmm.
I have no confidence in California opening up enough dispensaries to really alleviate what's going on here. However, I do have confidence in us putting another driver on the road and another
Yep.
driver on the road and being able to deliver and increase the velocity there. It goes back to how do we get more people in the top of the funnel? I think it's that trust aspect. And a lot of
Hmm.
people did billboards and programmatic, no trust there. So we're not getting enough of these more concerning consumers, these more conscious consumers to come in. So I
Hmm.
think it starts by changing the marketing and how we're talking to them.
Hmm.
But then I also think it starts with leaning into delivery. And so if you look at, again, to the CPG industry, it had almost 3 decades head start on e-commerce, right? And
Hmm.
e-commerce is still a small 10%, 9% of total commerce, right? That
Hmm.
includes cars and stuff like that. But I bought my Tesla on an app. It was delivered. I never went to a brick and mortar, right? So now you're
Yep.
getting big assets to move over to e-commerce, which is only going to accelerate e-commerce. In cannabis, specifically in California, brick and mortar had a year, maybe 2 years head start to delivery. So, in my futuristic view, I think delivery is going to surpass retail by a multiple. And then
Hmm.
where I think we get to, Josh, which I'm really jazzed about, is getting to cool activations that I think everybody is starving for coming out of COVID, right? We want to get together. We've all been to the bars. We don't know if we need more alcohol. We've been at home, like we want to get together and feel good. And there's no better place you're seeing that in LA with these health events that are going on, whether it's ice bath and heat tent, breathing exercise, yoga, maybe there's some education. And you can build a better relationship between the top of the funnel, right? The marketplace
Hmm.
and the farmers, which is what
Yep.
we're also trying to do. We're reaching out to the farmers in Mendocino and Humboldt, and we're saying, we know you're getting squeezed. Let's create a more equitable relationship between top of funnel and bottom of funnel. So it's not just the top of the funnel guy putting pressure all down and squeezing everybody, and then so many people going out of business. I left Wall Street. The last thing I'll say is I left Wall Street under the notion of leaving cutthroat competition for collaboration. But cannabis has been no point in collaboration. It's been cutthroat, and you see a lot of people cannibalizing and putting pressure on people downstream. And I'm out here saying, if we work together, we don't have
Hmm.
to cannibalize the industry. We can work on bringing more of the 40 million people in and getting them off of Ambien or over-the-counter drugs or anything that's not good for them and improving their quality of life, because that's what the power of the plan is. it can improve so many people's quality of life across the whole day cycle. And I just want us to work better together. So my future prediction is delivery all the way, better activations. It will be omni-channel. Retail will have its place, but given the restrictions of the local rollout, you're going to train people with delivery. And to your point earlier, people were doing delivery on the traditional market anyway. So it's going to be a tough go for retail. But ultimately, you want to have a good partnership with retail stores, and you want to have delivery. You want to meet the consumer with where they're at, in store, curbside, or delivery. And if you have better partnerships in the industry, you can service the consumers better, build better trust. They'll tell more people and bring more people in. And that's my Wizard of Oz, future prediction.
Yeah. You know what? Actually, you just had it all click together in my head, right? In terms of delivery versus retail, right? So here's the thing. Overall, in the general market of consumer goods, what's happened? Delivery's winning. Amazon is winning. It's all about the death of the retail stores and the big chains. That's the overall picture. The cannabis industry is different because over all the many decades that it was illegal, there never could be retail, right? Delivery was always in the position of power. And then we're in this odd thing where when every legal adult use market starts, as you said, it's been the ones that were the early trendsetters, it was just retail, right? And then delivery started getting, rolled out, like you said, in California, but it was always following retail. And then now there's states coming online like New York, obviously a huge market that people find interesting. And out of desperation, they let them start doing delivery prior to, some of these stores opening. They're opening it up. But delivery is in the picture from the beginning. And when you're talking about, convenience ultimately wins. How did Amazon win? Convenience. And so, what just clicked in my head when you're talking is, I think that retail doing well to a certain extent in the cannabis industry is a function of two things. One, the states where it essentially gets the head start over delivery. I mean, the other thing, New York and New Jersey, when they dropped their series of regs, right, they focus on what they consider, the essential licenses first. Retail's in that. Delivery wasn't, right, really in Jersey. It was not prioritized. And then, what it makes me wonder is, so it's a function of this focus on retail. Obviously, big companies like MSOs are focusing on as many dispensaries as possible. But then what clicked in my head is, what if it's the novelty, right? What if it's the novelty of this is an illegal drug, right? That's been consumed by delivery in private, right? And all of a sudden it's like, I remember being like feeling, I always say, the first time I walked into a Native Roots dispensary in Colorado, I felt like I was Charlie being handed the golden ticket into the chocolate factory, except it was better because the candy got you high, right? But it's just like, it makes me wonder, right, if everything you're saying is completely right and that delivery in the end will totally be dominant. I'm, the Secretary of Cannabis Beverage Association, right? And beverages are easier for delivery because they're not taking up limited retail shelf space. But maybe you're 100% right because convenience wins, right? There's always been the base of delivery in this because that's what dominated an illicit market. And maybe the sheen at some point, the novelty, the coolness, the fun of buying weed in a retail store doesn't end up, lasting. So I thank you, it was like a little mini epiphany. And I think you're 100%, right. That's where we could evolve.
Another comp there. The novelty. An interesting fact is I'm weird. I ask everybody all these questions, right? I can't do enough research, and everybody's like, "Why are you asking this question?" I got on Instacart, I don't know, 7-8 years ago in California, getting groceries delivered, and everybody's like, "Oh, I love the novelty of going to the store, picking out my produce," and I'm like, it goes back to value, Josh. Time is your most precious asset. Those grocery stores are not set up to really benefit you to be in and out. They're trying to move you around and get you to do impulse buying. And how many, specifically female friends or female people I surveyed, they said, no, I love the novelty going in. And then once they got on Instacart, they were like, this is amazing. I get 3 hours back on a Sunday. Like, wow. And so I think there's going to be novelty always in community to get together. On-site
consumption could provide that. right?
Yes.
We're not used to that. When you said before, I'm like, all right, I think, Scott's heading towards on-site consumption. There will absolutely be a novelty in hanging out. But like I used to say in college, right, your social circle was defined by your drug of choice. They're the people who want to go out to a party and drink a bunch and get rowdy. And then there are people like me whose vibe was, I want to sit around with a bunch of my friends, maybe pass the J, smoke a hookah, and have a great conversation and feel like I'm bonding, right? And we are just in the early stages of on-site consumption coming online in this country. And I am so excited for how that's going to play out if regulators don't mess it up completely.
Have you been to them? You've been to the ones
no,
out
so
here?
they're not, Jersey, we're still early goings. I have not been to an on-site consumption place in any of the legal states yet, and it's still new, right? I mean, the big thing I think is going to be Vegas coming online, right? Which is moving ahead now, because then that's just such a tourist destination, and it will be set up in the market early in New York. And I'm very excited about that. But yeah, right. We ran over our time because it's just like we're riffing. I just think it's been like such an interesting, way that we went in terms of tokenomics and vision and see how things are gonna, play out. So I really kind of I'm glad we, went down this path. Could talk forever with you, my friend, but I want to be respectful of your valuable time. So I think we'll probably wrap it up here, Scott. Thank you so much. All right. And John Puro here signing off for Cannabis Last Week, our Cannaconvo. And tune in, check it out. Hope you guys enjoy, folks. Okay.
Thanks, Tom.